Professor Mandal, my esteemed colleagues, distinguished scholars, seniors, and friends, I would like to begin with my expression of gratitude to the organizers who for the last 2 years, and this is the 3rd year, have been striving to bring out aspects of the field known as positive psychology. I congratulate them for their continuous effort and investment in this field. I have tried to understand the field and have also tried to look at the possibility of well-being in this world. My effort is largely rooted in the curiosity of psychologists. I'm a student of psychology, but the question of well-being is not for an individual, it is also for society and it is also for this entire earth. I don't think it is possible to experience well-being at individual level and observe that others are in trouble. We need to look at the possibility of a kind of synchronization where individual well-being and social well-being can go together. With this in mind, I have tried to organize some ideas. The contemporary situation is something like this, that we are still not happy some of the time and some people are unhappy most of the time. And the most crucial challenge is that we are habituated. Once we are exposed to something, then it loses its value. There is adaptation to pleasurable situations. Also, we make negative social comparison that some people have something I don't have. This kind of relative deprivation is another major concern which we find in our life. We also notice that there is inequitable reactions to equal losses and gains. That if we lose something, if we lose 10 rupees or a note of 100 rupees, then we have more pain as compared to when we gain that. Adaptive but distressing emotions, anxiety, depression, anger, they are on rise. Now this scenario is one which describes the condition of modern man almost everywhere. So negative emotions, negative social comparison, the kind of affective reactions which we make to things that happen in our environment, the way we respond to our world, and the kind of feelings that we have. I think it is well known now that when we talk about well-being, we often refer to a kind of subjective feeling, a kind of affective experience, positive affect, life satisfaction, more positive effect and less negative effect. These are well-known parameters. And this figure is also quite known. It simply demonstrates that something is happening, that income is increasing, and with increase in income, with increase in economic status, the life satisfaction is not going up. The discrepancy increases, and after some time, the life satisfaction remains constant. So we spend more to get less. This kind of gap between economic prosperity and experience of life satisfaction, which is one major component of well-being, is problematic. Now, I would like to draw your attention towards something which goes beyond the individual and which poses a challenge before the entire society. These are summary points about our current situation. Materialism, alienation from nature. These two are the foundations of a consumer culture which treats human beings as consumers and environment and society and everything other than the person as things to be consumed. And there is a kind of partitioning between human beings and the environment and habitat or whatever is there. And everything is for that individual. Humans are above and independent of nature. We also notice that technology gives us a kind of empowered mindset that we have freedom to do anything. We can manipulate the material world. And this creates a separation of human life from the natural world. Human beings are not embedded in the natural environment. They are not embedded in the habitat. And the relationship is one of consumer and things to be consumed. We also notice that with technological development, we are spending less time in direct contact with nature. Our relationship is mediated by artifacts. Now, this situation can also be examined in the context of the assumptions that we have as practitioners of mainstream psychology, so-called mainstream psychology. Almost all psychological theories are anthropocentric in their worldview. You have all psychological terms which indicate individuals' characteristics. So you are packed with motives, interests, goals, plans, abilities, personality characteristics, everything which is used to explain behavior or our conduct is within you. And you try to explain the variance in behavior on the basis of these psychological characteristics. And we treat this universe as a giant machine. You want to explain that on the basis of this model. External behavior, everything has to be translated into external behavior, then human beings will forget how to deal effectively with inner and higher aspects of subjective and objective reality. If you just confine yourself to the objective reality, in order to study you have to translate it in terms of physical, material, measurable reality, and I think then you have to exclude many things. And that has happened. This kind of effort that has been made has created this kind of scenario. Now, as compared to the anthropocentric worldview, as compared to the so-called scientific approach, emphasis on objective reality, we have an understanding which treats the world as a cosmos in terms of things which are interdependent, which are interconnected. What you do influences others, and what others do also influence you. And I think this is something which is very important. This kind of reciprocity or multiple determinism, multiple causality is something which is problematic in the linear model of understanding, where you have a very simple way to see that there are some variables which will influence some other variables, and you are happy with that kind of explanation. There is also a very important assumption in most of the traditions of Indian thought, that human life is considered as an opportunity to pay back to significant others, living beings, and we need to contribute to life. We are part of that, and if my environment, if my family, if my country is not happy, I am also not happy. So my happiness depends on others. We have a notion of renewal. You are indebted to people. You are indebted to environment. You are indebted to living beings because they are providing you something for life. I think it's a very obvious phenomenon that you breathe air which comes from environment. If environment does not provide air, nothing can be done. So there is a kind of exchange relationship. You need to take care of that. There is also an assumption that the processes that are taking place at individual level and what is happening in the world, at the level of macrocosmic functioning, there is some kind of relationship. Now, this kind of assertion, this kind of belief, whether it is objective or not, I am not interested in that, because what you believe is more important than what is something. Enough psychological data indicate like that. So this kind of assertion that, well, there is some relationship will be something which help you to organize your behavior in some way. So in earlier days when yajna was performed, then you had to go to jungle and collect जो सूखी टहनी है वो ले आते थे और उससे आप यज्ञ में हवन करते थे. So you need to see what is happening in the world. You have to organize your behavior in tune with the demands of your environment. I think this kind of interdependence is something which is warranted, and in the linear model this kind of relationship is forgotten. We also notice that the boundary between self and non-self is held as permeable. What is inside you and what is outside you, it is divided by a permeable boundary, that something which is outside can come within you and what is in you will or may go outside. So दोनों के बीच में आवाजाही बनी हुई है. आपके स्व का, आपके आत्म का, yourself is relational, it is expanded, it is encompassing, it includes others also. Well, we must have heard about Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. It's an idea that, the whole world is like family for you. Now, if you expand yourself, where there is a space for others also, I think it is very much important if you want harmony in society, if you want to reduce prejudice. If you look at the whole tradition of thought, which is, quite frequently talked about and which is available in Gita, that if you see others in yourself and yourself in others, if you are able to perceive this, that what you are and how you are perceiving others, जैसे आप अपने को देखते हैं वैसे दूसरे को भी देखिए, अपने में दूसरों को देखिए और दूसरों में अपनों को देखिए. अपने जैसे ही आप दूसरों को देखिए. अपने को तो आप बहुत अच्छा मानते हैं. You think all positive things about yourself and you try to discriminate with others. So the growth should be of this tune that you consider others also as people, as organisms, as beings who have all those things. आपको जो चीज अच्छी लगती है दूसरों को भी अच्छी लगेगी. You need to think in this way and then organize your behavior. So self and non-self, this boundary is something which is very crucial. And I think lot of empirical research is available which indicates variation in self-construal across different cultural settings and what are the implications of that. I must tell you that self-enhancement appears to be the central goal in the entire modern psychology. How you are going to enhance yourself. You have self-esteem, you have self-determination. Go through literature, you will see at least 40-50 terms which in one way or the other emphasize this, that how you should pump the self, increase its competence, increase its value. If you look at the literature, even in stress-related literature, perceived control is most important. And then they talk about primary control and secondary control. Primary control is one where you are able to control the environment, change the person, change the other individuals. So if you are able to do that, then you are better as compared to those who think about themselves. And secondary control is considered relatively poor. But there is a lot of data which indicates that in certain cultures, secondary control is equally valuable. So the way self is conceptualized is a real problem. Yes, and now it is also being looked at with some caution by many thinkers, many psychological scientists. I would like to refer to two works. If you have time and access to that, you must go through that. One interesting work is by Mark Leary, and the title of the book is The Curse of Self. The Curse of Self. The kind of self which you are developing is going to be problematic. This caution comes from a psychologist from the United States. The book is published by Oxford University Press. It's very interesting reading, and it tries to analyze what are the difficulties with this kind of self we have. Recently there is another publication which talked about quieting the ego. So that's the problem. APA organizes a symposium on quieting the ego. What are the difficulties? How one can tackle that? So I think it is high time to think differently about the notion of self and what are the processes which can be more, in a way to expand that, the notion of self. So, what is wellness? What is well-being? It is a positive, sustainable condition. It allows thriving, flourishing. These are the words used in positive psychology literature quite frequently. And it embraces mind, body, society and environment if you increase its scope. There are some terms which are used in Indian tradition. You must be familiar with that. It is just to remind you that when we use the word swasth or autolocus, a person who is in himself or herself, you are with you. You are with your environment when there is a harmony. And I think this harmony is a value which has been emphasized in society. And that's why perhaps you find that the life satisfaction, Diner has shown that, a lot of data, that, poor people also have high life satisfaction. It is not correlated with economic status. Another interesting notion is that appropriateness and a kind of experience which maintains equilibrium, which maintains balance. I think this idea of balance is quite contrary to controlling the environment, or the idea of perceived control, or idea of primary control, or primary coping. Now balancing, you may call that balancing is also a kind of coping, but balancing requires attending to both, self and other. So the notion of well-being, notion of relating to environment, which locates individual functioning in the self, and one which decenters it, which tries to recognize others also, which tries to see that you are not alone, which tries to recognize that your effectiveness or your happiness cannot be thought without happiness of others. I think that is very important. As Bhagavad Gita mentions, the self-controlled man, if you think about yourself adequately, if you can control and monitor and regulate self, I think that is the precondition. And that is possible only when you think that you are not body, you are something more. What is that? It is very difficult. Nobody knows. When they start talking about that, then they say neti, neti, neti. No, not this, not this, not this. Anyway, but it is important to recognize that you are not body, you are not hand. You have this body, but you are not body. You have this name, but you are not name. So, self-controlled man, and here perhaps self brings into focus the greater reality, your identification with something greater. Though enjoying the sensory objects with his senses, restrained and free from attachment and hatred, obtains peace. I think the idea of mental peace, now we have a term mindfulness, but idea of peace is normally missing in the whole literature. It is not given as much emphasis as it requires. But we find that people do a lot of work, and ultimately they have difficulty. This peace is missing. How this peace can be obtained? Only using an incremental model of self, that you must have this, you must have this, you must have this, or thinking of some kind of restraint. It's important to recognize the limits. And there is a lot of analysis which talks about the difficulty of conditioning and conditioned nature of human being, and emphasis on deconditioning. Obviously a very difficult job. You have attachment, and attachment leads to problems. And then you may engage with frustration, and then you may have anger, and then you have many problems. But what kind of attachment should be there? And they use many techniques. For example, if you analyze the nature of attachment, it's very temporary. All attachments in the world are just for detachment. Nothing remains constant. So if you recognize this flux, then I think some degree of detachment will be possible. And I'm sure if you have done something without attachment, you will have more freedom. You will have more peace. You will have greater happiness. And as compared to the body as the foundation of self, the proposal is to consider human being as a jiva, where you have body, you have sense organs, you have mind, you have self. It's a composite. It's not just one. And this view is also given in Ayurveda, which talks of Rashi Purush, that it's a combination of many things, many components. Now, a wise man who gets this training to develop certain degree of self-restraint, to have wise discrimination about things, to have recognition that this world is changing, and we have to look at this change and the importance of this change. I think his behavior or her behavior will be different in regard to self as well as in regard to the environment or the people or other persons. So far I have tried to bring out some of the things which are available in our tradition. Very briefly, I have just touched, perhaps I reminded you, nothing new. Lot of work in the last 10-15 years particularly have been done within the field of positive psychology, which started with a kind of reaction to the approach which was prevalent, which focused on deficits, deficiencies, and they wanted to move beyond that and to recognize human strengths particularly and how to nurture those human strengths. Now, the findings gradually tend to suggest that hedonistic pursuit has its own limitations. It's not only that, it's not only prayas, there are shreyas, hedonic and eudaimonic, which talks of value. We also find that we have not been able to understand adequately what leads to unhappiness. What are those conditions? And lot of work is there which tries to establish that positive affect is something and negative affect is something. And it is also important that positive and negative affect both have certain contributions. The experience of fear or anger has also some adaptive value. Those who follow the evolutionary thought, they indicate that, well, for survival and for growth and development, they also have some important role to play in life. So, it is crucial to see the positive and negative effect. Similarly, how positive and negative events in life contribute to our growth also needs to be explored. Life is not skewed, and one should not think that it should be only positive. Positive and negative, both things are bound to happen in life. और ये सर्कल जो है वो चलता रहता है. अच्छा हुआ तो फिर बुरा भी होगा, बुरा हुआ तो फिर अच्छा भी होगा. I think it provides, a kind of image which nurtures optimism. It's not only that you have hope of only positive things and it will continue, but I think you should not consider the negative events as negative. There is a term resilience and whatnot, we know about that. But the point is that the presence of positive and negative and recognition of that as reality. It should not have some kind of escapism. Negative, no, only positive things should happen. I think it is going to create more and more problems. Then person becomes Buddha. It's, worldly life. Now, nurturing ego, self-esteem, I have already mentioned about it. It is not going to lead to happiness. These ideas are well known. I will not spend more time on this. When we talk about yoga as an alternative approach to understanding well-being and thinking about a different kind of paradigm, where your ontology is different, your methodology is different, your approach is different, and which empowers you. It's something which is very crucial, and the term is well known and its components are well known, but it has often been presented as something in a stereotypical form in terms of asanas and other things. But I think it also provides a way to relate this mind, body and spirit, and it helps integrating the three. It helps in developing some kind of peace, happiness. There are different ways. Now, many new versions of yoga are available in market. There are all kinds of approaches. Perhaps this is one thing which has been exported from India throughout the world. And different methods of yoga with various claims. Maybe 50 or 60 kinds of yoga are being practiced. All kinds of yoga. I will stop in a few minutes. We have started late, so this is the situation. So give me 4 or 5 minutes more. The problem which is with us is how to deal with emotional conditions. And we can develop different kinds of relationships. And if we have self-regulation, we can organize our behavior in terms of the emotional linkages that we have. We need to organize our mental functioning. How it can be done? We need to learn some of the methods. But it is important that your mental functioning should be controlled by you. This self-regulation, particularly a lot of work is going on meditation, and I have seen some reports by, I think there are some by colleges at Wisconsin where they are trying to see the effect of meditation by meditators for 1,000 hours of meditation, and a lot of work is going on in terms of their brain functioning and their social functioning. And it is observed that it has solid effect, which has been demonstrated in many ways. So, there are implications, but our teaching programs hardly attend to those aspects of yoga. Finally, I would like to conclude with this slide. The first two are the verses from Gita, and it says that you are responsible for yourself. If you recognize who you are your friend. और सबसे बड़े दुश्मन भी आप खुद अपने हो. And the self is the friend of the self. For him who has conquered himself by the self, but to the unconquered self, the self stands in the position of an enemy, like the external foe. Now, if you consider yourself something great, as Tagore says, self-development implies that we shall manifest the self, Atman, through you. Thank you very much.